Hi everybody, welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. So I have an update on this story. If you didn't see it, I published a video yesterday where I found out about this man, Adam King. He's Jewish, as you can see, claimed to have ashes from the red heifer that was recently burnt in the ceremony. And the news stories that had come out said that it was a practice for the real thing. But he claimed that it actually was the real thing. And so somebody involved with that sent him some of the ashes from the red heifer. And, I didn't know whether to believe him or not, because I felt like it was plausible, because there's been a lot of controversy surrounding this whole thing with the red heifers. But when I was looking at the pictures, it didn't look like it was the Mount of Olives, and this ceremony has to take place from the Mount of Olives within sight of the Holy of Holies. Even though the temple's not there right now, that's where it's supposed to happen. And then secondly, I'm always suspicious, and I didn't say this in the last video, but I'm always suspicious when big breaking news of this magnitude would come from a source like this on just somebody's podcast. This is the Timcast IRL podcast. It's some like Christian guys. And Adam was the guest on the show for this episode. And normally with really big news, this isn't how the news is broken. And so I decided to email my source, Adam-ondi-Ahman, and I'll show you what he emailed me. Before I show you the email, let me just remind you why I trust him. So this is Israel 365 News. This article is by Adam-ondi-Ahman, the one that sent me the email. Israel 365 exclusive, red heifers arrive in Israel. So I want you to pay attention to this person right here. This is Rabbi Azariah Ariel. He's the head of research for the Temple Institute. This is the man that from Texas that raised the red heifers, and it was his heifers that were brought to Israel. So Rabbi Ariel, he probably knows what's going on with the red heifers, right? So Rabbi Ariel, this is Adam talking to Rabbi Ariel because they're friends. This is me talking to Adam. So this is a good, solid source. I know that Adam personally knows the people at the Temple Institute and knows what's going on with the red heifers, so I'm going to defer to him. And it turns out he sent me this email. I said, "Hi, Adam. I hope you and your family are doing well. This Jewish guy claims that the recent practice for the ceremony of the red heifers was actually the real thing. I can't tell if this is just rumor." And then I leave the link. "Can you help me know if it's true? The video they show doesn't look like the Mount of Olives to me. Thank you." And Adam replies, "Jared, you just earned my respect. No, it was not the Mount of Olives, and the cow had been bitten by a dog. It was not kosher." Because that's one of the requirements for the red heifer. There's lots of requirements, but one is that it can't have any blemishes. And so if it was bit by a dog, if it had a scar, an injury, that would disqualify it, right? So I'm going to go ahead and go with what Adam says. And I'm not saying that this Adam King, is a liar. I don't know who his contacts are. I don't know who sent him these ashes. Maybe he was led to believe that it really was the real thing. So this is nothing about him. I actually really liked him as I was watching the podcast. I felt like he was very well spoken and kind. I kind of felt bad for him as he was trying to talk about Judaism and Jewish beliefs and the guys on this podcast. Not that they were bad, but I think they probably could have done better. It probably could have gone more smoothly. So at this point, let's go ahead and take a walk. We're in an area near Lamoni, Iowa. This is just across the border into Iowa from Missouri. And this is a rest stop. Lamoni used to be the headquarters of the RLDS Church, which is now Community of Christ. And it was named after King Lamoni in the Book of Mormon. So there's this rest stop, and there's a marker here to see. But I want to talk about rumors, okay? Because I've tried so hard during the course of my channel to stick to credible sources, authoritative sources, and avoid speculation, avoid rumors. Now, I have made mistakes in the past. Just like anything, when you start something new, like a channel, you have to kind of like figure out how to do it, figure out, what kind of content you're going to produce. And you get a lot of exciting things coming through the comments and also through emails. And I've made the mistake in the past of trusting some of those emails that I could not substantiate. And, that's just, we're human, we make mistakes. I think it would be bad if I continued doing that. And so I've really tried to cut down on just listening to anybody, no matter how credible they sounded, unless they had something more solid behind what they were saying. But recently, we've talked about the difference between pondering and speculating, because we are supposed to ponder, but we should avoid speculating. So what's the difference? Because they sound the same. Well, in that video, I looked up the definitions of those two words. Pondering more has to do with thinking about things that you don't know, but you do have more substance to think about, like actual concepts that are tied to reality, Whereas speculation, there's not as much substance. It's much more guesswork, and you're going off just minuscule bits of information and then inventing these elaborate theories, essentially. And I think that rumors are related to speculation. Essentially, you're taking something that's unsubstantiated, or you're relying on somebody's word, but you're not able to get to the actual source itself. And so that's what makes it risky. And I feel like more times than not, rumors are usually not true. And so you have to be careful. I think it's okay to think about those things. I think it's okay to look at that podcast and look at it and be like, oh, there's this guy. He is also a content creator and he worked for this place and he's Jewish. But you have to be critical. You can't just take things at face value. Like I said, there were a couple things that didn't add up. I don't think that the news would be broken in this way. And then also the pictures that he presented, they didn't look like the Mount of Olives. And so, that's why I didn't just take it at face value. We have to be careful with that. And so I feel like what I've seen during the course of my channel, and even before I started this channel, is it's very easy to believe rumors about far away places. Like, for example, you live in Utah, you live in Arizona, Idaho, and you're hearing, rumors about what's happening, for example, at Adam-ondi-Ahman. Now, this is something that I experienced before my channel. I heard a couple times people would be like, they're setting up lights. I know somebody that lives near there. They're starting to set up these lights in the valley of Adam-ondi-Ahman. And so the problem is, since you live in Arizona, Utah, you're far away, all you have is that person's word and their source. And again, it's not necessarily that the person is lying or that the source is lying. The source may have thought that they saw something happening that actually wasn't. There's always mental illness, and we shouldn't just assume that people are mentally ill, but there are people in this world that have mental illness that may have psychosis or something like that, and then they say something. Or there's the telephone game where maybe the source didn't actually say that. They said something that could have been interpreted that way, or you misheard a key word in what they were telling you. Or you thought they were saying this, but actually it was, instead of A, it's actually B. It's just the way that your brain interpreted what they were saying. So, but yeah, far away places. And so that's what makes me really happy about living here in Independence is, when it comes to these types of rumors, I can just go verify it for myself. If it's in Nauvoo, if it's here in Jackson County, Clay County, Davies County, Caldwell County, if it's, just somewhere here in the Midwest, I can go and verify it myself. I've heard other rumors too. Like one person said that they're going to tear down the Independence Visitor Center, and that they're going to make it into like a landscaped area that you can walk with flowers and stuff like that. In that the visitor center is going to be transferred to the Kansas City Temple. Now, I don't think that's true for a couple of reasons. Number one, we know that the Independence Visitor Center was specifically constructed to be one of the temples of the 24 temple complex. This was under President David O. McKay and his counselor, President Alvin R. Dyer. They built the visitor center according to the specifications that were revealed to Joseph Smith, which were supposed to be the dimensions of the temples. And then more recently, I think it was the last time I was there, I asked one of the young sister missionaries about the revolving door at the visitor center, because every time that I've been there, it's been out of operation. It's broken. And she said that they're just going to replace it, that soon, they're going to have a new door. And so that goes further against the idea that they're just going to tear down the visitor center. Why would they bother fixing the door if it's just going to be torn down soon? So you have that. There was another one recently that I heard where someone was told that the church is constructing a conference center in Jackson County. And, I can't disprove that per se, but I know it's not anywhere around here, around the Temple lot or downtown Independence. And it feels like if the church was going to spend that much money for like a conference center, that would probably be making news. Well, and then that's the other thing to talk about is how is news broken? Does it come through the rumor mill? Maybe parts of it can sometimes, but I think when it's something really big, the church keeps a lid on it. And most large organizations do. Governments, companies. Typically, you keep a lid on it until things are finalized. So, for example, I was taken aback when it was announced that the Kirtland Temple had been purchased. I didn't know anything about it. I had been looking at Community of Christ finances for months before it was sold, and they were talking about selling historic assets. And so I was speculating, or pondering rather, because I did have good information. They were specifically talking about selling historical assets. I was thinking that, well, the day may come when the Kirtland Temple is sold. And then just one day out of the blue, we received word that the church had purchased it. So you didn't have people like going around on YouTube, on podcasts, saying, yep, the church is in talks right now, or the church is already finalized the agreement to purchase the Kirtland Temple. It's not going to come through a podcast. I highly doubt. That's not how the church does things. Same thing with other big things, whether like new scripture is going to come out, or a new conference center, or, whatever. It's going to come through official channels. And the first time that they publish something about it is probably going to be the first time that you'd heard anything about it. And then there's one last thing I want to talk about is, okay, so we've talked about rumors, we've talked about speculation, we've talked about mental illness, we've talked about the telephone game, and sometimes you do have bad actors that knowingly make something up and want you to believe it. That, hoaxers. Basically, it's like the spirit of hoaxing. If you have gullible people and you just want to have a good time, and you can convince them of something, then you feed them a false rumor, and then enjoy the resulting excitement and everything. Okay, so you have bad actors, but then on top of that, another thing that I've seen is people not being able to recognize satire. So there are, I don't know what you would call them, like you have like, for example, Babylon B, that's the only one that comes to mind, but you have like people, groups, organizations, content creators that will produce satire. And satire is just supposed to be kind of like funny, like false news reports, for the purpose of being funny. But sometimes people don't realize that it's satire. So there are two specifically that people fell for. One was, and this was before the purchase of the Kirtland Temple, but one was that Elon Musk had purchased the Kirtland Temple. It came from some no-name website, and that should be your first clue. If you've never heard of that news source before, quote unquote, you might want to start there with whether you should believe it or not. But it's from some place that you never heard of before, and then it should also be kind of a red flag when it's like, okay, would Elon Musk have any interest in the in the Kirtland Temple? What would his plans for it be? Would he turn that into like I don't know, one of his special projects? I don't think so. I highly doubt it. He's kind of working on much bigger things. He's trying to get people to Mars and trying to get everybody to drive electric vehicles. He's also heavily involved in AI, so I'm not sure that he's interested in the Kirtland Temple. So that was one. The other one, which it seems like it came out not too long after the Kirtland Temple one, was that the church had that the church had purchased Westminster Abbey. It was going to convert it into a temple, and that it would be I think the article said it was going to be like the London Central Temple. Again, you have to think, whoever owns it, I don't even know who owns it, the Church of England, I guess. Do you really think that they would let something like that go? That's been around for, I don't know the history of Westminster Abbey, but I assume it's been around for centuries. There's a lot of, can you imagine the uproar? Whether it's someone from the Church of England, an Anglican, or whether it's just like a common Londoner, maybe even someone that's secular. Do you think that they would be okay with Westminster Abbey, which is basically a national symbol? Do you think that there might be a little bit of an uproar if they decided to sell it to the church and turn it into a temple? I don't think that would go over very well. So we got to use our critical thinking skills, and not just believe everything that comes across a podcast or a news site that we're not familiar with, or even if it is coming through the actual news, you still have to be critical, and you have to, because I've seen news articles make mistakes, especially some of these like space websites that talk about astronomy and stuff. I've noted, and I've pointed it out on the channel where they've made mistakes sometimes, and so you have to be really careful. You have to make sure everything is grounded. So again, this is nothing against, it's nothing against any of you that have sent me emails. We can all do better, hopefully in the future. But just be critical of things, and don't just believe everything. And, in this case with Adam King, I'm glad that the email was sent to me, and he did seem credible, and he, landed a spot as a guest on this large podcast. So yeah, okay, I can kind of entertain that. I won't just outright reject it, but it's got to be more than just that. It's got to be more. Who told you, Adam King, that this was not just a practice, it was the real thing? Do you have a name? Have you done an interview with that person? Can you provide, not that you'd probably have documentation for something like this, but do you have documentation? Like, we can't just go off of your word, So, okay, anyway. So I'm going to try and do much better in the future, being even more skeptical, staying away from rumor. I don't know when the last time was that I did just like a purely rumor video. I can think of a couple that I wish I just would not have made. I got too excited. But I think I've done pretty good with that. Again, it's okay to think, it's okay to ponder, it's okay to observe signs. If you see a sign that's not a rumor, it's just up to interpretation whether it's a sign or not. But anyway, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.